You know that GIF? Ooh, Happy New Year, guys. Happy New Year, you guys. I have some recommendations to usher in the new year: emotionally, physical glow up, relationship, productivity. Recommendations for books, podcasts, TED Talks, YouTube channels, and articles. These recommendations aren't self-help recommendations, but just basically things that got me thinking. The first thing I'm going to recommend are podcasts and the episodes. The first podcast called How to Build a Happy Life. It's by the Amantle. They have like series, basically the How to Build a Happy Life series. 2 episodes I recommend: Complexities of Human Love, a new formula for happiness. What I really like about this podcast is they interview people, they have guests and stuff like that who are experts on the field. For example, the new formula for happiness was by a Harvard professor who I think was running the longest study of happiness, something like that. The second podcast is controversial. Anything Goes by 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗦. Listen, I'm so aware that people have decided that 𝗦𝗢𝗢𝗦 doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. And while that kind of is true sometimes, some of the episodes, she has 2 really good episodes. The first episode is, I think it's called Future, Past and Present. Show the screenshot there, and she just talks about the relationship with time passing. She just had a lot of insightful things to say. I'm sure someone else could find someone who has probably said it better, said it first, I don't know. It really resonated with me. As someone who tends to look back on the past a lot, she talks about how your peak is your peak if you decide it's your peak. And then the other one is stepping out of your comfort zone and welcoming challenges, which is something I didn't really understand before. Third podcast is the Unwinding podcast, specifically the training your mind to see possibilities instead of limitations and abundance in 2024. We don't want to stress about things like scarcity, you know what I mean? Like, we don't want to be like, no, I can't do this because no, we're going to be abundant. I feel like that's a major key point in being the best version of ourselves, embracing abundance and feeling like nothing is out of reach. Next is the lavender lifestyle podcast. She has a lot of good podcasts. One that I really enjoyed and I took notes on is the How to Do Nothing, Live Freely and Manifest episode. I'm not really into manifestation anymore. The lady she interviewed, I liked her perspective on basically like social standards and social expectations, and I found her really relatable. And she just talks about like masculinity and femininity, and I feel like the way the internet has distorted that, even just saying that sounds so corny, being like masculine, feminine, but she really put it into perspective for me, like, oh, that's what being in your feminine energy means. It just means like allowing yourself to receive things, and then masculine is like, that's when you put things into action. And she talks about balancing both of these things. You don't have to be only one. I was like, wow. Final podcast, 10% Happier podcast, but specifically the Psychology of Money podcast episode. I don't usually like to listen to rich people's advice on money. I don't know why, which is kind of crazy. I probably should listen to their advice, but whatever. I was very iffy when I listened to this. I don't know what drew me to it. I think because my cousin read the book or something. The podcast, like, very grounded points. It wasn't this fluff that we hear like, you have to take out a risk, you have to do that. Like, shut up, first of all, nobody cares. I remember one of the things that stuck out to me was he basically said no one actually makes a mindless financial decision, I think they said. And every purchase or any time someone spends money on something is because I was feeling a need. And I was like, wow, like if you apply that to every single person, you know how like people judge poor people because it's like, oh, like you didn't play your cards right or whatever. And the way he said it is like every single person was feeling a need. If you want to change your relationship with money and success in 2024, that's definitely an episode to check out. Next up, for book recommendations, we are being literate this year. I am a reader myself, but 2023 compared to 2024 was actually a crazy drop. This first book, I'm gonna recommend this one because it's good to build momentum. It's a fast read and it's just fun. Okay, it's called The Sun Is Also a Star by 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗦. If you wanna check out that first book from your list of resolutions, I'd recommend The Sun Is Also a Star. Second book is The Atomic Habits. I've never read it, but it's definitely on my TBR because I feel like this year something I really want to really get into is like time management, discipline, and also how to build good habits. And I know people clown self-help books. Honestly, if you are worried about people clowning things and calling them corny, this video is for you, okay? Because that's something you need to leave behind in 2023. The next book is The Convenience Store Women. Speaking of finding things corny, this book is great because watching someone else not allow themselves to be trapped or like boxed into societal expectations is inspiring. Like, she is doing her own thing, living her own life. At some point she falters, but eventually she returns to herself, and I think that's an important lesson for a lot of us, especially a lot of us women. The next book is The Midnight Library. Don't read this book as a self-help book, but I like the overall message of it, and I also like the idea of traveling to different multiverses and trying on different lives. and it's a fictional book. Final book is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle 𝗦𝗢𝗂. Basically, it's about these people that have their own startup. There's a lot of great takeaways from this book. It's a fictional book, a lot of quotables, a lot of relatableness. Okay, now we have some YouTube channel recommendations besides mine, of course. The first one is Colleen Diaz. Colleen has been popular for so long, but I recently started watching her when she moved to London. One thing I like about her is the fact that she has a very strong sense of her personal style, which I feel like is important as a hot girl just trying to become you, trying to get into your identity. She seems like she has a very strong campus that she's following when she chooses things, like even her house decor and her clothes. The next YouTube recommendation is My Fam or My Pam, a 20-year-old living in New York. I already know that means she has a lot of money. She was 19 living alone in New York. I don't usually like luxury content. I kind of like content that's like more day-to-day content, and that's I just like the way she takes us about her day. And she also has like some kind of healthy lifestyle. But her lifestyle on my vision board, someone who has money, like she's very grounded. The next YouTube channel is 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗓. 𝗦𝗢𝗓 immerses herself in travel, art, learning languages, music. I think she sings as well, like fashion. Her channel for me represents someone who is in touch with what they're doing, right? And I also personally, I like travel, I like art. It's very inspiring. And I would apply the same to 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗓. She's also a YouTube recommendation. And then the next YouTube recommendation, we have Vicky Justice. This girl changed my life. She taught me something called the vacuum, where you hold your breath, suck in your tummy, and then that's an exercise on its own. Hello. I discovered this in 2019 and I noticed a difference within like 3 days. My life has changed since. She's an exercise channel. She has just different exercises for different like areas you're trying to target. She also has a booty lift exercise, which when I'm doing it, I can feel like the burn, which I really like. But I haven't been consistent with it, so I don't know if the difference would be crazy, but I feel like it would be. Like, I trust her that much. If you're trying to get your body snatched for the year 2024, like get into an exercise routine, no gym membership, home workouts, I definitely recommend Vicky Justice. Next up is Icy Cough, or basically any type of channel that does what people in dash way. Which is what Icy Cough does. If you're at home, you're not traveling, you're not exposed to things as much, and I feel like Icy Cough does kind of fill that gap even a little bit, because I'm watching people in Amsterdam what they're wearing, I'm watching people in Tokyo what they're wearing, and I feel like it exposes you to different types of styles out there, especially if you're on TikTok a lot. You guys know, we know TikTok fashion. Okay, we're not immune to it, that's fine, but I also feel like looking at other sources of where to gain inspiration from style besides Pinterest as well, because Pinterest is low-key an echo chamber. Like, it shows us more what we like, but if you're trying to like see what else you could like, Icy Cough is the guy for you. And then the tedx talks. I had a phase last year when I didn't have a phone where I was watching so many, and I have a top 3. I actually filmed a bad quality video on this. I might upload it one day, I don't know. This TikTok, and I cannot recommend this TikTok enough. It's called The Art of Being Yourself. It's by Carolyn McHugh. So this TED Talk touches on approval addiction, talks about purpose, which if you're like me and you've struggled with the word purpose before, that word used to be so big in my head. I used to be like, what the fuck is purpose? How do I know what's my purpose? What if I'm doing this and I'm sort of in my purpose, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just gonna share with you one thing she said on the podcast that really resonated with me. She was like, purpose isn't your job. It just dictates how you do it. And basically what that means for me, right? Like, for example, if you're like me, I used to be like, oh, I want to study this, but what if that's not my purpose? Like, what if I should actually be finding my purpose right now? And her being like, your job isn't actually your purpose. Your purpose comes from how you carry out your job. The freedom to be like, I can literally choose whatever I want. The only thing that matters is how I execute it. And then she also talks about the only thing stopping us from being the women of our dreams is the ego. She talks about ego. She talks about how there's a U-shaped hole in the universe. I feel like this is the core of what we need to slay our 2024. If there's anything you take away from the video, it's please go listen to this TED Talk. Next TED Talk is The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown. This is great for friendships and interpersonal relationships. This talks about how allowing yourself to be vulnerable opens you up to so much more, and it actually builds a relationship. It talks about how vulnerability is the willingness to do something where there are no guarantees. So that means even putting your trust in someone, friendships, relationships, or chasing your dreams. That's a vulnerability right there. And then finally, The Skill of Self-Confidence by Dr. Ivan Joseph. You are a normal human being. You probably struggled with confidence before. I feel like like the way what confidence is. It's almost like it's just a feeling you have. But Dr. Ivan Joseph talks about how it's a skill. You build confidence by doing things and proving to yourself that you can do things. And the same TED Talk, he talks about how you can do anything that you're willing to practice. I feel like that's such a great takeaway, great to take with you into 2024. If you have any New Year's resolutions that might seem a bit challenging, he talks about how you can do anything as long as you're willing to practice it. So that means things like learning a language. If you want to be a great cook, practice. Finally, some articles. This one is a whole Substack. It's called Mine. I think I'll put the link somewhere here. I don't know. It's called Mine. The article specifically on self-image. It talks about things like self-limiting beliefs. Next, it's not really an article, but it's a book. It's a short book. It's actually a speech. So I don't know how to classify this, but it's called This Is 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗓 by David Wallace. It's about the story we tell ourselves, how we make reality. Final article. I have genuinely forgotten. It's not even in my notes. Here, I'm reading from my laptop. But it's by... gosh, I forgot her name. Our goals, our dreams, be optimistic about them, try our best. That's the only thing in our control. I'm gonna put the link or the title for this article. So yeah, that is all for my Hot Girl 2024 recommendations.